What we will do is we will start our wonderful program. Welcome to Members Matter. Today's program is Think Forward, Not Straight, Understanding the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And our presenter is Jane Walters. And Jane is the first openly transgender woman to work at the Indianapolis Public Library and to become a branch manager. Congratulations on that, Jane. She specializes in both children's and teen literature, as well as literature by and about the LGBTQIA plus community. She is a founding member of the LGBTQ plus committee for the Indianapolis Public Library, and she has her MLIS in youth services and serves as one of the volunteer coordinators for the West Indianapolis branch of the Indy Public Library. So thank you. And I will, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jane. And as I was discussing with Jane, what we will do is I will be monitoring the chat, and we'll have a few breaks within the conversation where I will answer, or I will not answer, I will ask Jane your questions. So feel free to communicate any of your questions on the chat. Okay, thank you. Take it away, Jane.
You're welcome to answer any of the questions as well. If you know the answers to them, feel free to jump in. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here real quick so we can get started. As Anna was so nice to say, I am the branch manager for the West Indianapolis branch of the Indianapolis Public Library. I have been the branch manager here for over 2 years. Before that, I was a juvenile PSA, which is essentially the children's librarian without the MLS, especially in a small neighborhood branch. So welcome everybody this morning, and we will dive right in. So we'll start off with, because a lot of people, they see the LGBT and it's like, what are all, there's so many letters to it, and there's even more than what I have listed here. So I'm just going to do kind of a little overview to explain some of them. And I do always tell people that you want to make sure that even though you know the basics, if you're not really familiar with it, do some more digging and research on it, because sexuality and gender is very fluid. And so there can be different shades within the rainbow spectrum, just like there are in an actual rainbow. So the L is for lesbian, who is a person who identifies as a woman and is attracted to another woman. G is gay, a person who identifies as male and is attracted to other men. Some people do still qualify themselves or call themselves gay, even if they're not male or masculine presenting. Just as kind of an umbrella term. It is one that was used a lot more frequently than queer. Now you hear queer used a lot more because, and I'll kind of skip a couple letters here and get to the Q, which is queer or questioning. And queer used to be and has been and still can be used a lot of times as a slur. But it's gained a lot of popularity within the queer community and being reclaimed for just a more umbrella term, because there are so many people that they're more than just one letter. I myself am more than just one letter on here. I personally identify as a polyamorous, pansexual, transgender woman. So like there's multiple letters there for me in that. And one of my friends, she once said, you know, save some of the rainbow for the rest of us. And that's the thing though, is that you can be multiples across those, just depending on what it is. So a lot of times I just identify myself as queer because it's easier than trying to explain some of the other aspects of what I am. And for some people, they prefer gay than queer because it was used as a slur so much that it can be, for some, very triggering to be called queer because of past events. I know that when I was younger and I was growing up, it was definitely, you know, there were plenty of slurs to go around, and that was a fairly popular one. But I myself, I have personally reclaimed it. Bisexual is a person who is attracted to people of their own gender and a gender that is not their own. Some people, you do hear the term pansexual to describe this orientation, but there are some people that they do see a distinct difference between pansexual and bisexual. For example, I myself, I am pansexual, and the gender to me does not matter of the person. What their parts are or any of that, how they identify, none of that matters to me. It's the person themselves and their personality and things like that. I do have friends that are bisexual, in which they are only attracted to females or non-binary folks. They're not attracted to males at all, or they're attracted to males and non-binary folks. So they're still attracted to only two. It's not always necessarily going to be they're attracted to males and females. It's just it's a matter of it's only two different genders or gender identities. So that can fluctuate. And that's why I say that some of these, there are different shades and variations to them within each one of these. Transgender is a person who is not the gender they were assigned at birth. When speaking on this, transgender, it looks different for everybody. For some people, they identify as transgender, and you know that might be the extent of their coming out as transgender. It's just, this is who I am transgender, and they don't necessarily do all of the things that some people consider to be part of transitioning. And this could be for various reasons. There's all sorts of things that go into why somebody doesn't necessarily transition in the way that, you know, you see in TV and movies and things like that. And that it's all a matter of, primarily it's a matter of personal preference. It's the essential end goal for most transgender people is to be able to look at themselves and see the person that they actually identify as. For some, that might be achieved by taking medications, by dressing in certain ways, by having different types of surgery. There's all sorts of different kinds that can be had. For some, it's bits and pieces of that. I know people that are transgender and they've taken medication and done hormone replacement therapy, and that's the extent of it. They have no desire for any kind of surgeries, and they are happy with themselves. I also know people that they have done hormone replacement therapy and they want surgery, but they can't afford it. Insurance doesn't cover it, various things like that. I know people that would like to take hormone replacement therapy, and they can't for medical reasons. There's a whole host of things that can cause you to not be able to take and go through hormone replacement therapy. So for everybody, it's different, and that's one of the things that you want to avoid. Things like, are you done? Because that implies that there's some milestone or goal that you have for them, and it's insensitive, and you want to avoid things like that. And then the Q, as I said, is queer questioning, and For some, it's there are some that use this because their sexuality might be fluid, their gender identity might be fluid. And so they use this term. And then there is intersex, which is an umbrella term used to describe people with a wide range of natural body variations. And one of the things that's important in this one is that the majority of people that are intersex don't find out that they are until much later in life, even though their parents may have known for them. Because there are sometimes things that the doctors see when the baby is born, and then they go to the parents and they're like, you need to decide which way you want your child to go. And they make the decision to do surgery on the baby to determine whether they're going to be seen as seen as female or seen as male. And the child's never given an option because one, they have no say in it. And then later on in life, this can sometimes cause issues. There's a lot of good documentaries and things on people that are intersex and find out later, and there's this constant struggle within themselves. And in some cases, folks that are intersex do become transgender because the gender that was decided for them doesn't match at all for them. So that's where you can get some of this crossover as well. But it's one of the things that people are trying to push more for is these natural body variations. They don't cause harm to the body. They're not going to cause any harm to the baby or anything like that. They could grow up perfectly fine with those natural body variations, and then let them determine who they are for themselves. There's a strong push towards that sort of mindset to allow that to happen, so that you don't end up with people that are suffering so badly mentally with dealing with these conflicts within themselves. And then A is asexual or aromantic, and it's a person with low or absent interest in sexual or romantic activity. There's a law, sometimes you might hear this as ace. That's another term for it. And there are variations, huge amounts of variations in the asexual community as well. Sometimes it can be that there is sexual or romantic activity with somebody, but it's at certain times, or there has to be a specific kind of connection with them and things like that. There's a whole host of varieties to asexual and aromantic. A lot of people think that the A stands for ally, and it does not. So within the whole LGBTQ IA plus, ally is not in that because it's not part of the queer community. Allies are allies. And I think that that's really important to remember, that it's great if you're an ally, wonderful, thank you. We need a whole lot more of you, but you're not part of our name. So as I was talking about with the variations of gender and how it's kind of a shade, this is one of my favorite graphics, and it's the gender unicorn, because as you can see, you can kind of go across the graph of whether, like, where do you sort of identify yourself as far as being female, as far as being male, or as far as being other? How do you express yourself? So the gender identity is that's how you think of yourself. That's how you see yourself. The gender expression is how you express. What gender do you express? Some people, they might see themselves or think of themselves as male, but then gender expression, they might present as more neutral, or they might present as more masculine, or they might present as more feminine. And that can vary. And there are some people where you get into where you might hear that they're gender fluid. And that could be that, one day they may dress more feminine, they may dress more masculine, the next, and it can just flow. It is fluid. Some of the common pronouns, there are lots of them out there, but some of the common ones are she, her, hers. Those are my pronouns. I identify with she, her pronouns. Those are my pronouns. And an important thing to remember in regards to pronouns is it's not, if you want to ask somebody what their pronouns are, just say, hey, my pronouns are, say your pronouns. What are yours? Don't use preferred. They're not preferred pronouns. These are their pronouns. It's not that say my pronouns are she, her, hers. Those aren't my preferred pronouns. Those are my pronouns. And a lot of times you hear people and they'll be like, what's the big deal? Things like that. It's not that big a deal. And quite frankly, I would say yes. Yes, it is. Because if you were to, just as an example, go into a gym, find the biggest, burliest guy, and go up to him and start using female pronouns, it's going to matter. It's going to matter to him really quick. And it's going to show really, really quick when he gets mad and probably throws a dumbbell at you. So when people say that the whole pronouns, they don't really matter too much, they do, and they matter tremendously. And if you do use pronouns that other people don't necessarily see you as, if you get misgendered, a lot of times it's a gut punch. It really is, especially if it's intentional, because it's hurtful, it's harmful, and it can last. You can carry that for a while, because it digs right in there into gender dysphoria. It can really stir that up. It can cause all sorts of thoughts about, am I not man enough? Am I not female enough? Am I not real enough? And it can be very, very harmful. So as I said, the common ones, she, her, hers, he, him, his, they, them, theirs. I know that a lot of people, they get riled up about the they, them, theirs for the gender neutral pronouns, that it's not proper, but it's been used for decades. And honestly, we use it far more often than people tend to think. We're in the library system, so somebody comes in, they're doing something at the copier and they leave their phone. Staff comes across it and is like, oh, somebody left their phone. And then they go and talk to somebody. They might bring it to the manager and say, somebody left their phone. Oh, well, I hope they come back for it. I'm going to put it in the safe in case they come back for their phone. It's all gender neutral pronouns. We don't know who it is, and we're using neutral pronouns. If you are never sure about somebody's pronouns, default to gender neutral. Nobody's going to get mad if you use gender neutral pronouns. They will get mad if you use the wrong pronouns. They can get upset and they can get hurt if you use the wrong pronouns. And you don't want to assume people's pronouns, because you never know what they actually are. And it can be hurtful when you do. So, sorry, I went on a little tangent there. It's easy for me to do. Back to the gender unicorn. So the gender expression is just how they're presenting themselves. And that's one of the things where then you can't always necessarily presume somebody's pronouns based on their expression. And then there's the sex that's assigned at birth. And that's what, like, basically baby comes out, doctor looks at parts and says, okay, these parts, they're female, these parts, they're male, these parts, ooh, they're intersex and we're not quite sure. And maybe we need to do something about that. And then there are some people that are intersex and they stay intersex their whole life. There are a number of people like that. And then people that you're physically attracted to, that is part of your sexuality. And you can be physically attracted to one gender, but more emotionally attracted to another gender. So that's why there's also that physical attraction on here, as well as the emotional attraction. The thing to remember here is essentially, out of all of this, the sex assigned at birth is the only one that doesn't actually change. Everything else can change. It can change over time. People might identify one way when they're younger, and then as they grow older, they identify another way. And I know people that have transitioned and they were like, oh, I'm a trans woman, and it's like, this doesn't feel exactly quite right. And so they think, oh, I need to detransition. And then it's like, but no, this doesn't feel right. And then they come to realize that it's not that identifying as female or identifying as male, that neither one of those just single ones is right, and that they identify as both. Sometimes it takes some time for people to really hone in on who they are, who they're attracted to. And all of that can change as your experiences change in life and as just your thoughts on things change through life. So I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were talking about, they had thought that transgender was a sexuality. So that, well, if you were assigned male at birth, and then, okay, so you were attracted to women. So then if you transition and become a woman, then you're attracted to men. And it's like, no, those are two separate things. Identity, that's it. I explained, I'm trying to think of how I explained it. It was like, the difference is that one is who you go to bed with, and the other one is who you go to bed as. So as I said, the A, a lot of people think that it starts for ally instead of asexual. Allies are critical. They really are to the LGBTQIA community. And it's important that allies allow members of the community itself, the LGBTQIA plus community, a voice or a seat at the table when discussing anything involving legislation, issues, anything that impact them. If you're talking about library programming and things like that, and you don't have anybody that's part of that community at the table to have those discussions, that's an issue. If you're talking about healthcare things, if you're talking about HR related things, stuff like that, and you don't have somebody at the table with that voice, bring somebody in, even if they're only temporary, even if it's just to consult, bring somebody in on it. It's extremely important that happens, because there's so much that can be missed. It's just like when dealing with any type of community outside of, regular cis het white, able-bodied folks, anybody outside of that, if you're having a conversation, you want to bring somebody from that community in to help with that conversation. And the term ally, you can call yourself an ally, but your actions definitely show whether you are or not. And don't be surprised that if you step outside of that and you are showing that you're not, that you could potentially be called out on it. And I think that something that's important to remember is that if you do mess up and somebody does point out a mistake, people oftentimes take somebody pointing out that mistake as an attack, even if it's not meant as an attack, and it's just meant as a means of informing and educating. They take it as an attack. A lot of folks, they won't go through the trouble of trying to educate and inform and teach if they don't think that you are somebody that is worth doing it for, and they don't think that you could necessarily grow from it. It's so much better for our community as a whole if we can create better, stronger allies than pushing out folks that want to be allies but have messed up. So we're going to get into some of the bad news here in regards to why so much of this is important. Why does all of this matter? Why do we have these conversations and things like that? And these are some really harsh and hard to read statistics at times. 67% of LGBTQ youth hear their families make negative comments about LGBTQ people. 78% of youth not out to their parents as LGBTQ hear their families make negative comments about LGBTQ people. Teens who identify as transgender female reported a rate of 30% attempts at suicide, have attempted suicide, while teens who identified as transgender male reported at a rate of 51%. 48% of LGBTQ youth out to their families say that their families make them feel bad about being LGBTQ. And trans youth are over 2 times more likely to be taunted or mocked by family. And it's even worse for youth of color. So these are what they're hearing at home. And then when they get to school, it's not much better. And they're hearing it not just from other students, they're hearing it from teachers and school staff. They're hearing these negative comments, these homophobic remarks, all of this from school staff and teachers. So when they come to the library, that's not a place that they want to hear it. It could be the one and only refuge for them. And I have 2 stories that I share in regards to this, and one of which is that a young man came into the library and he asked one of my staff if they knew what a certain word meant. And it was a homophobic slur. And so they kind of did a like, okay, where is this going kind of thing? Is this a setup? As you might potentially expect from someone. And they were like, tentatively, yes. Why? And they said, because this is the only place that I don't get called that And that hit really, really hard because that meant that they were hearing it at home, they're hearing it at school, and the library was their only safe space. A young woman that I knew that would come in with some of her siblings, and she would often talk to me on the side, and she would talk about things at school with me, and she had come out to me, and I discovered that she was not out to her family. She'd gone through a breakup at school, nobody to talk to about it at home, and so I was the one that she was talking to about it. And I told her at one point, I was like, well, you know, hopefully at some point in time when you get older, you know, you can share that side of yourself with them. And she said, no, they didn't accept my aunt, and she moved out of state, so I never get to talk to her. So I'm never coming out to my family. And she was afraid to take books home that had queer material in them. There was a lot of things that just kind of kept her from being able to be herself at home. And I said, well, maybe when you move out. And she said, no, I'm never coming out to them. And this is a girl that's living in this environment of not being able to share like a harsh breakup that she went through at school, and just being brokenhearted and not being able to share any of that with her family. And she's 14 years old. She's still got 4 more years before she's even out of that house. And so they're dealing with this stuff daily at home, at school. And so creating these safe spaces within the library system itself are hugely important. And knowing how to talk to them, how not to ostracize them, knowing this stuff, knowing the whys are very important. And some of that comes into play when you're doing displays, story times, things like that. I know that this is a fairly common, a fairly popular term, windows and mirrors. It's talked about quite a bit. And if you don't know what it means, windows offer a view into the lives that are not necessarily reflected in their own. Mirrors, when children read books that have characters like themselves, they feel valued and represented. Another one that I had heard at a conference not that long ago was sliding glass doors, which I thought was kind of neat because it was a window, but then it allowed you to then step into the world of them as opposed to just seeing it, which I thought was kind of a neat phrase. And you sometimes get books like that have sort of that feel to it more than it just being a window. And as you can see here, the diversity in children's books, and this is a little old, it's been a bit, COVID has definitely caused some issues with trying to get some newer updates for information like this. But in 2018, 1% of children's books featured American Indians, First Natives, Indigenous, 5% Latinx, Hispanic, 7% were Asian Pacific Islander, Asian Pacific American, 10% were African American and African, 27% were animals or others, so like trucks and inanimate objects, that sort of thing. I mean, it says something when animals and other outweigh everything that's not white. So keep those sorts of things in mind when you're developing your story times, when you're developing your displays, because it's when you're referring to LGBTQ, when you're referring to the queer community when you're talking about it's not just in June. It's year round. You know, we're queer year round. It's not just something that's happening in June. You know, it doesn't start June 1st and end June 30th. And it's like, okay, we're back to being, you know, part of the heteronormative society kind of thing. These are things that we deal with daily. And it's important to reflect that. So keep that in mind when you're doing your displays and things, because you can incorporate it easily. When you're doing your story times, you can incorporate it easily. If you're doing a story time on families, it's so easy to throw in one with 2 moms, 2 dads. You can throw in one that has just an aunt and, you know, auntie taking care of the kid. There's plenty of those environments in which those are the families, you know, you have tons of family dynamics where it's the grandparents that are the ones that are raising the kid. And so why not incorporate all of it so everybody can see that not just themselves in it, but it normalizes it for others. They don't see it so strange as they have 2 dads. Why do they have 2 dads? If a kid is learning that early on, that that's something that can happen, then it's not an issue. Then they're not looking at that other kid as somebody that's weird or abnormal. They're not looking at those parents as being weird or abnormal. It's just, oh, look, they got two people that love and care for them, you know? So I know that that's a lot. So I do have this self-care moment where everybody kind of take a breath and, you know, have a sip of your coffee or your water, your tea, or whatever you got going on this morning. And this lovely quote by Emily Dickinson: "Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tunes without the words and never stops at all." I like that one because there is hope. There's hope for all of this. There's hope for it to be better. Things have come so far, so very far. It wasn't that long ago that my wife and I were at a pride parade, and we saw for the very, very first time military personnel in full uniform marching in a pride parade. That would have been unheard of, absolutely unheard of 20, 25 years ago. Even more so before that. So things are moving along. They are getting better. It is taking time, but it also takes people like you learning about these sorts of things, creating these safe environments for folks. And so it is getting better. And that's why I want to talk about the good news. The good news is that a basket full of kittens are always cute and adorable, and so are chicks with dogs. I mean, come on, they're just so sweet. But in all honesty, the good news is that you are here, you're not alone, because you have all of these people that are here to support you as well. And the great thing also is that not only are things getting better than they were 20, 25 years ago, technology has allowed so many different ways for people to reach out, connect, and find other people in talks like this, through Zoom, through Discord, through Facebook, through Twitter, and those sorts of things. You can find those people that can support you in what you're trying to do, in who you're trying to be, in creating those welcoming spaces. But there's so many ways that you can help your patrons and even your coworkers to make your space and their space a safe and welcoming one. And you can do that through greetings, by, rather than when folks come in, saying things like, "Hello, ladies," or "Hello, boys and girls." you know, use the more gender neutral ones. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good day. Anything like that. One person suggested one time that she desperately wanted to call her class her minions, and would sometimes, especially once the movie Minions came out, the kids actually got into it. She one time, just as a joke, came in and said, "Good morning, my minions," and they thought it was hilarious. And so that was like what she called them from that point on. Not the one I would recommend, but very funny. You can create those spaces through your collection development. Like I was saying, with your displays and stuff, there's so many great authors out there that are part of the queer community, that and there are so many great books out there that you can use in your sci-fi, your romance, your horror. I mean, whatever it is, whatever the genre is, whatever kind of display you're trying to do, you can incorporate one that has a queer character of some sort in there. And in most cases, even a queer main character, which is even better. And then there's little signs and there's big signs. That's one thing that I like to talk about a lot. I mean, you can see my rainbow kitties behind me. Stuff like that. I have on my mug, I have a little pride ribbon. And those things are like a spotlight in the night for people that are part of the queer community. They see it immediately. It's kind of, if you think about any fandom that you're a part of, you know, and you see like somebody's got a button, no matter how small it is, a little pin, something that you recognize as part of your fandom, you recognize it and you spot it almost immediately. And it's like, hey, I'm a fan too. You know, there's immediately that connection that we have this in common, sort of thing. And so if you think about it in that regards of just in a fan base, when you then think about it then as if you were queer and say not out to your family, not out to anybody, and you saw somebody that had like a little tiny rainbow pin or something like that, a rainbow ribbon on their mug, a pronoun button, pronouns on your name tag, anything like that, immediately it's, even if that person is not part of the queer community, they could very well, you know, they're an ally at least. And I have had where I wasn't wearing my lanyard, which has all sorts of queer swag all over it. I just had my mug and I was sitting at a reference desk, 2 other people next to me, and this teenager came, walked by those other 2 people that weren't busy to me, just to ask me where the bathroom was. And I've had that happen multiple times for just even, you know, they wanted to find some material. And it's not that they were necessarily looking for, you know, LGBTQ material or LGBTQ related material. They just knew that there was, that I was a safe person. And I've done the same thing. I have at one of our local grocery stores, there's a couple people that when you see them, it's like, oh, I know their family. And so I'll get in their line, regardless of whether one just opened up next. I'll be like, oh, you can go ahead. You can go ahead. And I will stay in that line because I know that that's somebody that like, they're going to get me. I'm not going to get like a weird stink eye or whatever like that from them, that kind of thing. So it really makes a huge difference. And so there are those little signs like that. And then there are the big ones, obviously, where it's like this library welcomes all. We have a huge rainbow in our children's area that and things like that. We do have like regular year-round LGBTQ collections. And so there are some fairly big signs in my branch and in some of the other branches, and I've seen them in other places. And you see them sometimes on the front door. They're like, you belong here, and it's got a rainbow and that kind of thing. And so there are those big signs and there are those little signs. And the little signs are the ones that are good for that, like one-on-one sort of thing. And the little signs also, if you're, because when I very first started out in the library system, I was doing my practicum and I wanted to do a queer display. But I was allowed to do an end cap, and I was like, awesome, I'll do some really cool queer YA books, that sort of thing. That'll be awesome. And I got pushback because, well, it's Indiana, fairly conservative. And the county that I was doing it in, even more so. And so I got pushback from the manager of that branch about doing a display. And so I had to get creative with it. It couldn't just be like a boom, here's all the queer books kind of thing. It was, check out these award-winning books. Because I could do that. And I could make sure that they were the Lambda, Stonewall, those awards. And that's how I was able to do it. So sometimes you need to do the little signs because you're in a place where you can't necessarily do the big signs. And sometimes those are even more important, because when you're in an environment like that where it's not allowed or you get the pushback, that's where it's kind of needed the most. I know a coworker who July 1st, she wasn't even there to take down her display. When she came back on July 2nd, her LGBTQ display had been taken down because Pride Month was over. And so it didn't belong up past June 30th. So if you're in one of those kinds of communities or library systems, and you're wanting to try and reach folks, go with the little signs. The little signs can be a lifesaver for some people. And I mean that literally. Using a transgender use chosen name at work, at school, with friends, and at home, 71% reduces, it reduces depression symptoms by 71%. It reduces thoughts of suicide by 34%. It reduces suicide attempts by 65%. So if you think about that, and then you think about your little sign, and just knowing that you have that a kid just knowing that they have an ally in you could potentially do the exact same thing. So I want to talk about equality, equity, inclusion, and impact. A lot of times when people are talking about equity, they interchange equity and equality, and they're not the same thing. Equality is the practice of treating everyone as though they are on the same level as everyone else in their community. Equity is the practice of giving marginalized community members the things they need in order to be on the same level as non-marginalized community members. So sometimes I do a presentation with one of my best friends, Mahasan, and she is absolutely lovely and adorable. And she's about 4 foot nothing. And I am about so it's a good visual. Some folks may have seen the one where it's the folks watching the baseball game. All of them have the same size box to stand on to try and see it. And some can barely see it. Some can see it like their whole entire like upper body is over it, that kind of thing. And then there's one that can't even like see halfway over. And that's where that equality, the equality is giving everybody the same box. My friend and I, she's got her master's degree. I have my master's degree. So we can be treated evenly as if we're on the same level. Equity wise though, if it comes to like standing and trying to look over something, giving her the stool to stand on as opposed to her having a stool and I having a stool, that's where that difference comes in. So just remember that those aren't interchangeable. They are different things. And that'll help a lot of people if you can remember that. Inclusion is the practice of making members of marginalized populations feel that they are welcome in your space, that it is a space where they can feel safe, free from harassment, not just giving them access to your classroom or library. Our library is open. Our library is open to everybody, whether they're homeless or whether they work for one of the Fortune 500 companies. It doesn't matter. So regardless of whether they're experiencing homelessness or whether they make, 6 figures a year, they're all allowed in. But do they feel included? So you might allow queer folks into your library or your school or your place of business, but do they feel included? Well, you can help them to feel included by creating those displays, by doing more than the big signs and the little signs are great, but by doing more than that, by having programs that might be directed to them, by having workshops or information, things like that that are available to them. That's another way that you can help them to feel included and not just accepted. And then impact. While this may not be something that we can see, feeling welcome, represented, and treated equitably will make LGBTQIA plus individuals feel more welcome in their community for who they are. And it doesn't just impact one person, because we all talk. And I don't mean that in the way of that, oh, hey, you're trans, you must know so-and-so. Not in that way. That's not how I mean. How I mean is it's just like when you go to a restaurant, you go to a store, whatever like that, you get treated horribly, you're going to tell all of your friends. And then they're going to avoid that. Because if they don't feel welcome, or if you don't feel welcome there, do you think that your friends are going to feel welcome there? You want them to avoid that. So it has a direct impact, not just on them personally, but then it has an impact on your library and your library system. I know that the library world in itself is fairly small. So if the work environment isn't necessarily very welcoming, if somebody knows somebody else in that system and a job opens up, they're going to reach out and go, so what's it like there? You know, and even if they don't know, they might have somebody else that works there because it is such a small community. And so you can create a huge swath of change, and the impact can be immense by just how you treat your coworkers, how you treat your staff, how you treat your patrons, all of that. And it needs to be across the board. It can't just be, oh, well, if you're a lesbian or gay, then you're fine. But if you're trans, you're going to get treated like crap. That's not going to fly. Or if you're gay, but you're not the kind of gay that people expect you to be, you know, it can't just be, it can't be conditional. It needs to be, there needs to be equity. And everyone across the entire spectrum needs to be able to feel as if they are welcome and that they are represented. Because if you're leaving out anybody, then you're not being a good ally. And you can be part of the queer community and be a bad ally even. That happens a lot. And it's unfortunate because it causes infighting. So here's some bonus good news. I took a look at Illinois, and you guys are doing fantastic. I'm in Indiana, and now I'm wishing I was in Illinois. I really do, because Illinois is one of the states that have enacted an anti-bullying law to protect LGBTQ students. So that's amazing. And it's also one of the states, one of the very few, as you can see by these maps, that have passed non-discrimination laws and statewide regulations to protect LGBTQ students. So good job. Keep up the good work. You're doing amazing. Please talk to some of your surrounding states and try and get them on board too, because that would be awesome. So yeah, and these are the sorts of things that can make huge changes, and it's something that you can actually help with, because a lot of this stuff, it starts small. It starts within the community. It starts within local schools. Everybody always looks at the big elections, but those small, like school board elections and things like that, those are the ones that really make a lot of the stuff happen. So even if you don't put yourself out there to try and like step forward and run for something, if you know somebody that would be like a fantastic ally or something, encourage them to get out there and do their thing and speak up and be that person. And then you can like build that way. You can do it by supporting some of those folks as well. Even if you don't know them personally, just kind of keeping an eye on who's running for what and what your community partners are doing. By affecting change within your own library or library system, and then affecting it within your community and your community partners, it can spread really well. And that's how you can get things like these changes with the laws, with the anti-bullying and the non-discrimination laws. So keep up the good work, and awesome. So if there are any questions, I have a couple just examples of some positive representation for different age groups, because I know that there's a variety of folks in on this. And so these are just some books that I've come across and that are fairly new. So if you're looking for something newer to incorporate into things, these are some that have come out within in the last either last year or this year. So do we have any questions at this time?
We do have one question, and that is, are you going to share your slides with us, or would you be willing to share your slides with us?
I would be happy to share the slides with you. That is no
Thank you.
problem at all.
Thank you. Some of the definitions and explanations were excellent, and I think it would be great to have those on hand. I do have another comment where it was, love the subtitle for Bling Blaine, throw glitter, not shade. That is a great subtitle.
Yes, I always try to do that myself.
I know that from experience on our director's listserv, we had an incident where there was a lot of discussion where one of the libraries had a young person come in, and it was time for them to renew their card. And they wanted to be listed by a male name. And, you know, the library was really kind of like, well, how do we handle this? And because, you know, most libraries have it where if a person is under a certain age, the parent has to sign the card. And the parent wasn't all that enthused about the kid going by that name. And, you know, there's another example where someone said, you know, they were going to put the name the child said they preferred, and the parent stepped in and said, no, we're going with your official legal name, and that's it. So, I mean, how, you know, I know you kind of touched on this, but can you, you know, give us more illumination on how you might handle a situation like that, or recommend handling a situation like that?
All good questions. Our library system actually just recently, I helped them with redoing the library card registration. So it has a spot for name, and then it has a spot for legal name if different than above. And this is good not just for folks that might be transgender, but it works great for, we have a large chin population. And some folks, they have Americanized names that they use and they go by rather than their legal name. And so that way that is on there. If you have a notes field within the registration, so that when you pull something up, what you can always do is put a note in there that says child prefers to be called and then have their name. One of the things that I've had to do in the past, because I ran into something like that where it's honestly, it's extremely common. I've heard that so many times from so many people, especially with the no, you're using this name because the parent's not on board yet kind of thing. I had a kiddo that was experiencing that, and whenever they were around, but the parent wasn't around, I never called them by their legal name or what the parent wanted. I never actually used their name when the parent was around at all. I only ever used the name that they wished to be called and to go by when it was just one-on-one. You know, it might be, you know, they come in, they're looking around kind of thing, parents off. I mean, it can be, some people feel like it might be a little unethical, but I don't see it that way myself personally. But I would just be like, you know, if it was me one-on-one, I'd be like, Hey Susie, how's it? How was school? You know, that way they at least heard it once from me while they were in there.
Mhm.
You know, and then if they came up to check out afterwards and they were all done, it'd be like, all right, it was good seeing you. Take care. I'll see you next time. You know, and then I just wouldn't use a name then. Because we don't tend to a lot of times when having like one-on-one conversations use people's names. Like it's not like I'm going to be sitting there going, you know, having a conversation with you and then like in the middle of it throw out Anna, you
Mhm.
know, kind of thing. You might use it at the beginning or the end of a conversation, but not like really in the middle. Um, and sometimes you might not even say somebody's name at all unless you're like trying to get their attention. But if you can manage to use the name that they prefer when they're not hearing it anywhere else, oh, it's like cloud nine when you like the first time I heard somebody like call me by my name, it was so uplifting. You know, I mean, it was even like the first time I heard ma'am, even though like I'm not that old, you know, kind of things. Like, but like to hear ma'am, you know, it was just like instead of sir, it was just like, I got a ma'am, you know, it was like, and then you're riding high for the rest of your day.
We do have another question. Can you share any advice for handling pushback from some patrons and members of the community regarding diverse materials that have been introduced, particularly into the children's collection?
Um, so I'm just gonna assume now that it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you're pushing an agenda, you're trying to change, you know, my kid or whatever, like that sort of thing. One of the things that I think is important is that um, most library systems, and hopefully this one does have that, has if if you have an issue with the book, you can always fill out this form, you know, and I'd be happy to take that. You know, then you don't end up in the argument. You know, there's something that you can just hand them and say, fill this out, and I'll be happy to pass it along. Because if you try to get into that argument with them, you're not going to win because people that tend to do that, they're looking for a fight, they want to fight. And they've already come in with their mind made up. So you're not likely to change it. And
Okay.
anything that you do say, they will try and twist and use against you in a way. So use your policies that are already in place. They're there. They can protect you. They can protect the material and what you're trying to do.
Okay. That seems like good advice. I also noticed that you mentioned, wearing a button or having a little, you know, flag or a little ribbon or something that identifies, with the rainbow. And I know that unfortunately, I've known of a few cases where people who were homosexual were fired from their positions in public libraries. They may not have, the board may have not come out and directly said that's why they were firing them, but that was really the reason they were fired. Um, so how, especially a lot of our libraries are in small, very conservative towns. And even if they're not, you know, the librarian's not homosexual, but if they wore something like that, or they had, you know, rainbows on the door, or, those kind of things, they would get a lot of pushback, and it may even lead to them being fired. How do you handle those kind of situations where you want to send a message that everyone's welcome here? And I imagine in some of those communities, the children and other people in that community who are not heterosexual really need someplace. They need that connection. They need someplace to go where they're safe. So how do you balance all those things and keep your job?
That is one of the things where, wonderfully enough, a pronoun pin can do wonders. It doesn't have to be rainbow. It can just be she, her, hers, he, him, his, doesn't matter. It's like, these are my pronouns. It's not stating, and it's not directly saying pride. You know, it's not a big rainbow. It's not even a little rainbow. It's just, my pronouns are he, him, his, she, her, hers. You know, like, you're stating a fact. There's not really much pushback that they can give you for having a pronoun pin, as opposed to, you know, if you have a rainbow button or something like that, or like
Mhm.
have a button that says I'm fantastic, which I have. So
Yeah, you know, it's
it's
these,
it's unfortunate that there are those cases in which where you have to be like, well, you know, how am I going to how can I approach this and still keep my job?
mhm.
You know, and that's, like I said, with the award winning books, you know, there was no rainbow on it, there was no nothing. It was just, check out these award winning books, and they all just happened to be Lambda and Stonewall. You know,
Mhm.
that sort of thing. So
Well,
you have to sometimes be subtle to get through,
I think
unfortunately.
that's good advice. And although, I'm probably at a different point in my career where, I've been at this, I've worked in libraries for almost 40 years now. And I'm just kind of like, get over it, folks.
Yeah.
Just kind of like the world is full, it's big, there's room for everyone in it, so it's like, just get over it. But in
And
reality, in re-
and honestly, another way that you can do it too is in who you know.
yeah,
I mean, are there board meetings? Do you know the people that are on the board? Do they know you? Do they know what great work you're doing for the community, what you're trying to do, that kind of thing? You can pick and choose and find your allies within the library board. And then you have somebody on your side. You have somebody that has your back. And that's why I said also, it's not just, you know, it's not it's not the big elections a lot of times, it's those little ones. And if you can even just get to know the board members
mhm.
and get a couple of them that get to know you and what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and then kind of feel them out, like, where do they stand on some of these things? You know, how do they feel about, you know, being a little bit more inclusive and being a little bit more um, open and visually open and inclusive, not just being inclusive, because you can be inclusive all you want, but if nobody can see it, then they're not gonna know it. And so if you can get to know some of those people and let them get to know you, you can kind of get them on your side. You can also then try and push some of your friends, you know, somebody that, oh, you retired? Have you thought about going, like, trying to be a board member, you know, in your free time? You know, so many people that retire from the library, then come back and they volunteer for the library. It's like, no, do one better. Like, come in and be an advocate, you know, kind of thing, on the board doing this sort of thing. And then that way you can build that up and make that change and create those changes that need to happen.
That's excellent advice, Jane. I do a lot of work with boards, and regardless of the circumstances, I always try to encourage directors to get to know their boards. And I think if they can relate to you as a person, and you have that kind of connection already, then you'll have better success with your board, period. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard and a challenge, but I think that's the way to do it. And then I think you also make a good point in this day and age where I think we're all more aware of diversity and equity and, you know, just kind of having a raising the floor for everyone and, really addressing some of the things that haven't happened in the past. And, somebody said that they've, really looked at their collection and they've purchased books that reflect more diversity than had ever been before because the previous director just didn't purchase those kind of books. And so, I mean, I think libraries are aware of that, and we've always had, like, I forget who said it first, but someone said, a good library will have something to offend everyone. And I believe that's true because you have to have a diversity of viewpoints. And I think people are more aware of that and they're trying to get their collections to reflect that. And, I think, your comments are like, maybe it's good, go ahead and do that. But when you do this, have it subtly, you've suggested some very good strategies on how to, not put it like in somebody's face, but still put it out there. And
Right. Right.
I think
That's a
that's
lot of
great.
times what the problem is for some people. A lot of times the biggest problem is the fact that it's so in the face. And it's like, well, it's not, it's kind of like that whole, you don't have to like flaunt it sort of thing. Do you really need to like flaunt it for me? Is like, and which is always kind of weird, which I always think is kind of funny because when you look at like anything heterosexual, that's flaunted constantly in front of us in everything. And so like what they consider like blatant flaunting or whatever that could be such like a, well, I'm just holding hands or that sort of thing is like, oh, you don't have to rub it in my face, kind of thing. Is just like look around you, like all of this is being rubbed in our face kind of thing. But I think that another thing that's important to know though too is that it's not just the director that can get to know the board members. Like I'm not a director. And even when I was just, when I wasn't a manager and I was, a children's librarian, I got to know the board members. So they knew like what was going on in my little neighborhood branch sort of thing. So if you have other staff that encourage them to talk to the board members and to get to know them and that sort of thing. You sort of want to you sort of want to build your ride or die group. That way that it's like, okay, I got your back, you got my back. We're gonna tackle this together. And it's not like I'm solo sort of thing. And if you can develop that, especially in your smaller branches or your smaller communities and stuff like that, and then it's not just you, and you have these other people that are talking to board members and talking about good stuff that's going on. And hey, did you see that thing about this and that or whatever, with this really cool, I just saw this great picture book with these two moms and it was just, it was so cute, that sort of thing, just to kind of like normalize it more for them so that when that pushback comes, it's not, then they look at it and go, what is the problem with this? Like there's like, then they look at the people that are causing the outcry and stuff like that as being just completely off the wall and out of left field. And some of the things that you can do as directors or as HR or any of that sort of thing is I've noticed that we're just now re-going over like our circulation manual, and the policy manual is next, but wording is changing in it. Rather than having that whole he/she, which never made sense to me anyway, is like, why doesn't it just say they or them? You know, like just get rid of that. Because one, it doesn't leave out, you know, non-binary folks or gender fluid folks. It just, honestly, it flows better when you're reading it too, quite frankly, rather than like reading something and going da 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 he/she. Grammatically, it makes more sense.
Okay. I appreciate your wise wisdom in dealing with these issues. I know this is something you deal with every day, and I appreciate you sharing that and guiding us through these tough issues. Is there anything you would like, any words you would like to leave us with?
I think the biggest thing is to remember you're not alone. You don't have to take the fight alone. You don't have to try and figure it all out on your own. If you're struggling to figure out how to approach a situation, how to respond to an outcry or something like that, there's a whole vast library community. And within that whole vast library community, there's a whole vast queer library community that can offer suggestions, offer support, and do all of that. And then on top of that, there's also still, even outside of the library, you know, there are, you know, there's the ACLU, you know, there's like so many other ones that like, oh, there's an issue here. You know, you might not be unionized, whatever like that, but there's other organizations out there that you can call in to help support you, legally support you.
Good,
And
thank
you
you.
can, and you can always fall back on ALA's
That's a
stuff,
good
you know,
point.
and be like, look, it's in our, you know, creed right here, you know, it's got our Bill of Rights and everything else like that. We're following that, you know.
That's good. Well, and as you say, Illinois has some pretty good laws in place to help with that
Yeah.
too. So I think, and I think within the library world, as you say, I think you have a support network. I'd like to think that we all have each other's back. And a lot of times we're very collaborative and sharing. And I think we could do that in this situation too. So, but I appreciate you for talking to us about this and for sharing your experiences. And I love your cats. I'm assuming these are your cats. They're adorable.
Yes, those are my cats. That's Pie Wacket and Desolate.
They're so cute. So yes, so thank you, Jane. I really appreciate it, and our members appreciate it too. So
It's my pleasure, and there is my contact information. So if something comes up later on, you can reach out and I can try and give you some advice. If you just want more pictures of my cat, that's the Instagram. Honestly, the Instagram is really just pictures of my cat and eyeshadow pictures. Lots of eyeshadow pictures.
well, this sounds like
Kind
fun.
of
I'm gonna
thing.
have to watch I'm gonna have to go to your Instagram account.
So
So thank you. And we're going to start the other part of our program where we're going to get an update from the state library. And oh, I just wanted to remind everyone this has been recorded and we will make that recording available. And Jane said that she will share her PowerPoint. So
I will
we
do
are
that.
set. I'm so excited. This is going to be great. And it was a great presentation. Thank you so much, Jane.
Thank you so very much for having me. I appreciate it. And if you're looking for support, look at all the people that are in this. in this Zoom meeting right now. There you go. There's a huge support network right there. Just start writing down names and where they're from. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Jane. Bye.
Bye.
Hello, everyone. Now we start the other fun part of our presentation. I'm going to turn to Karen Egan from the State Library, and she's going to give us updates from what's happening there.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Anna. And boy, what a powerful presentation. Thank you for offering that. And I'm really glad I was there to join you as well. Well, first, I bring greetings from Secretary White and Director McCormick, who say hello and thank you for inviting us to talk to your group today. We are really excited that last week we emailed the award letters to 211 libraries across the state for grant projects that support pandemic recovery. The state library received about $4.7 million in American Rescue Plan Act dollars from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. However, Secretary White and Director McCormick felt so compelled by the applications that they added an additional $1 million to the funding sources so that we could maximize the impact statewide. So that was really exciting to have happen. Now, for those of you who didn't know, awards are in 3 categories. Bouncing back from the pandemic grants are supporting workforce recovery and is a specific response to the high number of people who lost their jobs during the pandemic or just had trouble with finding a job. And awards are positioning libraries to provide essential resources, training, services, resources to support the job seekers in their communities. Expanding digital access grants are supporting the restoration of library services that may have been shut down or damaged. Damage is probably too strong of a word, but cut back during the pandemic. And libraries took this opportunity to really look at what they are circulating to their patrons based on their patron need. And funding was everything from tools for the do-it-yourselfers who are at home during, who are working remotely and during their spare time doing repairs and such. So tools to computers for those who are suddenly working remotely and discover the only computer in the house is the one the school checked out to their children, but they don't really want to use their child's Chromebook to be doing their work for work. So all kinds of high need cases that were funded. Now, on the road to recovery, allowed for the transformation of library spaces to build the internal capacity of libraries so that it will keep patrons and staff safe during the recovery. And what if this should happen again and we have another shutdown? So there's a lot of disaster planning type components in the road to recovery and getting things that help keep the library patrons and staff safe. Now, in Heartland, 80 library agencies received awards, and that impacted 76 communities within your service area. The library system, 3 academic libraries, 13 school library agencies, and 62 public libraries received grants. Now, I found this really interesting because, when you take the entire membership, about 15% of the Heartland membership actually received grant awards in this round. And nearly $1.5 million was awarded to Heartland libraries. Awards range from $5,000 to $50,000, and the average grant in Heartland was $17,911. So we are really looking forward to hearing about the benefits for the people you serve as your libraries take the recovery from the pandemic and restore services going forward. We're excited about that. So I don't know if there are any school librarians on the webinar today, but the school district library grants closed last week. And applications and expenditure reports are being processed right now. And it's too early to be able to tell how many came in. But last year, during the pandemic, 649 public school districts received about $1.4 million. And we're hoping that there's more this time that come through. Now, for public libraries, the Public Library Per Capita and Equalization Aid Grant is open, and applications are due January 15th. The application has changed just slightly from last year to fix a couple of formatting issues. But again, the library will be asked to review the entirety of Serving Our Public 4.0, the standards for Illinois public libraries as required by statute. I personally recommend that library boards add 1 or 2 chapters of the standards to their board meeting agenda every month, so that throughout the course of the year, your library boards are having an ongoing discussion about the standards and how your library stacks up to those particular standards. So when it comes time to say, this is how we're doing, and these are the benchmarks that are set, you have a really good handle on where your library is falling within that. Now, I'm also excited to discover that the 2020 census data for municipalities has been certified. And so if you are a municipal library, you can contact Jake Magnuson about this if you have a question. Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville is finalizing a library service area map. And this map will be based on library boundaries and overlay the 2020 census data tracks to provide an electronic solution for determining populations. Now, this will be extremely helpful when a public library district does not follow municipality boundaries, because you know how they take a little trek in, or you may have taken this little subdivision and it's off of the beaten path, basically. So this map will be able to electronically give you that data. And what's really neat too is they're going to add demographic information to that through additional census data. So you will be able to identify the demographics of the populations that you serve. Now, a completed map will be ready this fall. They are working on finalizing that right now as we speak. We don't have all we know is later this fall. So I'm hoping by next month. If a public library chooses to submit their per capita grant application now, but doesn't have the certified 2020 population, please continue to list your 2010 population on the application. All populations will be verified and updated if necessary before the grants are awarded. Our intent is, once we've got all of the information certified for the municipalities and electronically calculated, we will provide that back to public libraries. No more parcel counting. Yeah, yeah, you're right. That'll be good. The state library is also accepting applications for the FY22 Live and Learn Construction Grant Program. And those applications also are due on or before January 15th. A webinar was conducted October 17th that's available on a link through our website. And if you have any questions about it, contact Mark Schaefer at the State Library. But these grants are for accessibility. There are many grants if you have something minor that needs to be done. And you can also do remodeling and new construction under this. But the funds are limited under this grant program. Also, in fiscal year 2020, for the first time in 8 years, the General Assembly appropriated $50 million to the Public Library Construction Act grant program. To date, the State Library has awarded 16 grants totaling just over $30.3 million. Now, Chicago Public Library is entitled to 10% of the appropriation. So that leaves roughly 9.6 million left to award. We've notified 9 libraries that applied for the offering of their eligibility and expect to award the remaining funds by the end of the current fiscal year. Unfortunately, the General Assembly hasn't appropriated any more money since that time to the Public Library Construction Grant Program for future years. However, the state library does accept annual applications for the program each year, and those are due on or before April 15th, just in case they do appropriate funds to that. Now, under that program, and they're probably shouting it from the rooftops right now, but Hillsborough Area Public Library District, Jerseyville Public Library, East St. Louis Public Library, and Evans Public Library District in Vandalia did receive grants under the Public Library Construction Act grant program. So we're excited that all this money is going out the door to help support libraries for a number of initiatives. Feel free to call the state library if you have questions about anything going on. But with that, does anybody have any questions?
I see a question about, can you go over the certification process again, like with the municipals,
Oh,
the municipalities, they've all been certified for their,
yes, municipalities' populations have been certified. So like the city of Springfield has their certified populations, and those have been provided to county clerks. So if you are a city library, you could call your county clerk and get that certified data right now.
okay.
Jake has a list as well that he can help you with too, but just the municipalities have been certified at this moment in time. Districts, as you know, don't follow necessarily municipality boundaries, and so they have to be calculated in a different manner.
Okay, so if someone goes to the map that's been produced by SIUE.
Yet to be produced. It's not a public website yet.
Okay, so, but when that data is available on that site, will that be considered certified? Okay,
Yes,
all right, good.
it will. They are using the certified data.
All right, great. And is there any estimated date for when that will be available?
They're saying November.
Oh,
So we're saying this fall.
safe language. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. So probably by the time that the grants are due,
Yeah,
then
before
that
the
will be
grants
the,
are due, that will be available.
okay, good. I think that clears it up. Looking at the chat, there's a little bit of questioning about that. So that's great.
Right. And again, if you want to submit your per capita grant now, just use the 2010 figures and we will make those adjustments based on, because I know that Jake had shared a couple city libraries have already submitted, and he was returning them or letting them know what their certified population was right away.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for all of the money you're giving us. I have heard from a few of our libraries, and one story comes to mind. Little Ashley Public Library got a grant from you guys, and with the money they got, they were able to replace 5 old computers that were over 11 years old, and they're doing it. They also got like a camera and microphone, so somebody could come in and do interviews from their library, and I'm sure they could also do like telehealth visits, and we also have had like the online court thing. So, it's so exciting to hear where money that, when you're talking millions of dollars, the thousands that you give some of the libraries doesn't seem big, but it's huge to them. And so they really appreciate it. And it always warms my heart, as I'm sure it does yours too. So thank you, Karen, and keep the money coming.
We love to give away money.
Better than the lottery. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Leslie was unable to join us this morning, so Ellen will be doing the covering administration, but I think we'll just roll that into when she talks about membership. So I'm going to turn this over to Cassie. Cassandra, are you there? Can you talk about share?
I sure can. Thank you so much, Anna. And so we are really excited that the big news, of course, is the Share Mobile Library app. We've gotten such great feedback on that. And so thank you to everyone who's taken the time to review the app, review the different features and follow up with me and the Share team. We really appreciate it. So the big news again is that it is out now up and running, and it is going out to patrons on Monday. So we will be adding some additional information to the Share Mobile Library webpage, which is right on the front page of the Share site. And so you'll see a tab up there for Share Mobile Library. So we'll be adding some marketing materials. We'll be sending out press releases. We also have some printed bookmarks, but due to some restrictions in delivery because they're patron-facing content, we could not send them to libraries individually through delivery, but we will have some of the printable materials on the website, or if you're nearby at a hub or you're out, out and about and you're near a hub, please feel free to stop in. We have some printed, you can pick some up. So those are some options for you. In addition, one of the other big projects that we have been working on has been the 7.0 upgrade. And so if you haven't had a chance yet, Dina went through some of the new features on that. And so if you would like to check that out, it's also on the Share website. And I also wanted to mention that we have a party next week. Shelley Stone is retiring after 39 years working with Illinois library systems. And so I just wanted to personally invite everyone, if you'd like to come wish Shelley well. We will be having it at the SIU Carbondale hub. The hub, it's actually in the older building. We moved buildings last year or the year before. So it's going to be in the main atrium, and the address is the 1740 building. So we look forward to seeing everyone there. And so unless anybody has any questions for me, I think that that's all I have for you today.
Okay, thank you very much, Cassie. Now I'm turning it over to communications. I don't know whether Danielle or Shandy will be speaking, or both of you, but you can take it away.
Hello, it's Danielle here. Yeah, so we really just wanted to remind everyone to make sure that if you have not registered yet for Member Day, our early bird registration deadline is approaching. If you register by Sunday, October 31st, you will get a sweet treat. So we always encourage you to go ahead and register ahead of time. There are still seats left, so go ahead and do that as soon as possible. And don't forget that our apparel store is open as well. So if you want to buy any shirts or anything, you'll want to place those orders by November 7th in order to get them by Member Day. And you can find that store through our Member Day webpage, which I will pop in the chat as well. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah, and there will be 9 live breakout sessions, 2 live keynotes from Zachary Benedict and Tabari Coleman, PDH hours from school librarians. And we should note that while many of these sessions will be recorded, they will not all be recorded.
Yes,
so if you can make it that day, you really want to make it that day.
Exactly. Yes.
So please register by October 31st if possible, and we'll send you that sweet gift.
Yes, exactly. And then the other thing we wanted to mention too, we have heard some people that aren't sure if they're registered for our newsletter or they're not seeing our newsletter. If you think that you are signed up to receive our newsletter, We do recommend, make sure you're checking your spam or your junk folder. If you have a Gmail, make sure you're checking your promotional folder, as sometimes our email will pop into there for whatever reason. It just happens sometimes. If you are not sure if you're registered or you don't think you are, I'm going to put the link in the chat to sign up for our newsletter, because it's a great way to hear about events such as Member Day, or like today's Members Matter meeting, a great way to hear about grants from, not only the state library, but other grants that could be available for you to apply for and get, and other important information related to the system, continuing education, updates from the CMC, things like that. So we always encourage people to sign up for that newsletter. And that way you can get all that information in one place. And there's multiple different types of emails that you can sign up for as well. And then also we recommend you follow us on Facebook and Twitter for other important updates.
Okay, any questions for Shandy or Danielle? Okay, ladies, thank you so much.
Oh, I did have something. So
Okay.
a while back, I'm so sorry, I got excited. So we're working with Share on this Share mobile app stuff, right? So one of the cool things that I like that harks back to something that you guys requested of us months ago was a way to easily retrieve some of the Share Cloud Library and Share Full Library collections-based posts that we've been putting on social media. So while you can still find that on social media, we're going to be trying to share those in a web page that you'll be able to link to, that will be linked to, is linked to from the Share mobile library app. So if that applies to your library, you'll be able to, click that, and then you can just bookmark it. And then if you ever, find yourself, oh, I haven't seen one of those in a while, but I love sharing those with our patrons, you can go right to that page and see if you've missed anything.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to check in with delivery now. I hope Susan is there, and if not, maybe she's designated someone else. Okay. Not having anyone popping in for delivery. I know that Susan is dedicated to the dogs delivery on the go program, and that's where, if you know that your book is going to another library down the road from you on the delivery route, you can I think indicate that or put it. Yeah, I don't want to speak about something I don't know, so I'll just stop there. But
And
that is,
I could
yeah, go
probably
ahead.
help a little bit. So it's a program that we've had for quite a while, but if you want to learn more about it, you can find it on our delivery overview page on our website. So we redid that page a month or two ago. So it's real easy to learn exactly what is functional 5-day delivery and what is delivery on the go and how does it work. So I would say just go there and get the information, but we will be rolling out a little more information. I'm hoping to encourage you guys to use it a little more often, because it'll be a way that some items, it will be limited, but some items, not limited to the specific items, but limited to where it's going, but can get there within the same day instead of having to wait a day.
Okay, thank you, Shandy. I know that some people who are not Share members feel that they cannot use delivery to send items beyond, their door. That's not the case. If you're an IHLS member, regardless of whether you're a Share member, delivery is still available to you, and you can send items to any other library within our district. And basically you can still use delivery to send any item to any other public library throughout the state. So And that's it. And now I'm going to turn it over. Well, I see, all righty. Some chat here. Okay, we'll cover that later. It looks like people are handling that within the chat itself. Ellen, are you ready to cover membership and administration?
I am, and there's not really a whole lot more to report. I'll echo everything that Danielle and Shandy said about Member Day, and we're working hard to get that set up for you. We're excited. As of this morning, we had 152 people registered, and that didn't count speakers or staff or anything like that. So we're really looking forward to a good day. And I'll echo what Shandy said about in-person attendance is really what we're shooting for. We're happy to record them. And just like this morning's presentation, it's always good to go back and review what you heard, but having people there that day makes a big difference too. As far as administration, as Karen said, we were one of the lucky recipients of one of the recovery grants, the Road to Recovery. We received $25,000. And we're hoping to put that into our buildings to make sure our buildings are safe places to work in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of all the challenges we've had over the last year, trying to keep a safe environment established. So we're looking forward to that. And right before the grants were announced, we also accomplished a major task, and that was filing our annual report. So it's safe and sound with the state library as of the 30th of September, and we're looking forward to any input from them on that. And I think that's about all I have. The only thing I would add is that today is part of our newly established Third Thursday series. And happily, Member Day also falls on the third Thursday. So we're hoping to continue these. We've really been pleased with how they're going. And thanks to all of you for your participation. And that's about all I have, Anna.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. And I just want to say, anyone on your staff can register for Member Day. And I encourage everyone to include your trustees, encourage them to come too. We do have a trustee track. There are at least 3 programs aimed specifically for them. Actually, there are 4 that, yeah, there are probably more that could apply to them. And unfortunately, we can record most of those programs, but we can't record all of them. So especially the one on the Open Meetings Act. So I would encourage you to try to get them to attend. And I think they will find them very beneficial. And I think anyone working in any of our libraries would really enjoy the day and find it very useful. And if you register now, as we've said before, you'll be entitled to a sweet treat. So, and I really hope you can all come. We've worked really hard on finding the speakers and presenters, and we're fairly confident it's going to be a good day, but it'll be an even better day if you're there to help us celebrate our 10 years in existence. So now I'm going to turn it over to anyone in our who's watching, who would like to share anything about what's happening in their library. If there's some big news they would like to share, if there's a program idea that's going really well for them, anything at all. If you would like to share it, you can either unmute yourself or you can type it in the chat, whatever you would prefer. And I, will be silent here and wait for someone to speak up if they're so inclined.
I'll say something real quick.
Okay, great.
Hi. We are partnering with a group from Springfield. You might have seen an email that I sent out a little bit ago about systemic racism training. It's on November 10th, and I'm going to put the, if anyone's interested in that, if they could email me. It's an all-day training. where I can't remember the title of the group who's doing it, but I can send that to anyone who's interested. But it's a really good one-on-one training where you really learn a lot from what I've been told. I'm excited myself. So if anyone's interested in taking training on learning more about systemic racism, let me know and I can hook you up. We'd love to have you. I'm doing a really bad job of explaining it, but ask me any questions and I can answer them. So I'll email out again. That's it.
Thank you, Amy. I have signed up for that program and I am really, really looking forward to it. I just think it's an exciting opportunity and the cost is very, very minimal for a whole day's worth of training. So, you know, I encourage everyone to take advantage of this opportunity. And I think in our current times and situations, it's even more relevant than it has been. So that's my plug. And I see that we've heard from the Ashley Public Library and they are doing a grow and gobble project. Let's see here, where is it? Yes. Saw this here. Okay, yes, here it is. Ashley Public Library just had their first Grow, Gobble, and Give program for K through 5th graders. Monday evening, the U of I extension is, let me see, providing the program. The program is about pumpkins. All right. It's amazing what you can do with pumpkins. You can decorate them, but you can also eat them. And there's all kinds of exciting recipes for that. Anyone else wish to share what's happening in their library or a program like Amy just highlighted for us that we can all take advantage of? Okay, if no one has anything else they'd like to share, I'm going to end our program. Thank you all for coming. I found it very informative as well as moving, and I was so excited to hear from the State Library and of course all of my wonderful colleagues with their updates. So thank you, and we hope we'll see you at Members Matter. Or we also have, we're not having it today, but usually every Thursday afternoon we have directors chat. And I love keeping up with the listserv. So, and if you're having any problem getting communications from the system, please let me know. And, or you can contact Danielle or Shandy. And, you know, between all of us, we'll figure out a way to get you connected to all of the great information. Okay, thank you. Have a great afternoon. Bye.